Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. This is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership, and today I've got the distinct pleasure of introducing you to two fantastic human beings. I'll start with Jandel Allen-Davis, who's the CEO and president of Craig Hospital here in Denver, Colorado. Hello, Jandel.
Hello. Good to be here. Thanks, Greg.
And coming live, if you will, from Charlotte, North Carolina, is John Eades, the author of a very, very good book. If you're remotely interested in becoming a better leader, I highly recommend Building the Best 8 Leadership Principles that are very easy to follow, very well written, and from a place of heart. And welcome, John. So just not so much of an interview or conversation, and I'll start with you, Jandel. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today, and let's end on why you do what you do.
So thanks, Greg. I'm Dr. Jandel Allen-Davis. I'm actually a physician. Graduated from medical school forever ago. It feels like 1984 from Dartmouth Med School. And I'm an OBGYN, which makes absolutely no sense in terms of where my path has led me as the CEO and president of Craig Hospital, a nationally renowned neurorehabilitation hospital for acute and or for traumatic and acquired brain or spinal cord injuries. So it's a funny thing, even in terms of how I got where I got. The last question you asked us to think about, I answer the question simply by saying that doors open and you walk through them. Mm. And it's been, aside from, I like to say, Greg and John, the decision that I knew I wanted to be a doctor from a very young age. I'm old enough that I thought girls had to be nurses and boys were doctors. But then came the civil rights, the modern civil rights, and certainly the women's movement of the late 60s and 70s. And it enabled me to say, oh, I can be a doctor. And so from about 11, I knew that's what I wanted to do. But then I've also just loved being part of making things better. Wanted to be part of folks who were ready to roll up their sleeves and do great work or not so great work, or the grind work that has to be done. And so back to the other thing around how you get where you get is I've just learned you never know who's watching you. And if you just show up and do your best and be very much present, doors open and you walk through them. So 2 years ago, actually more than 2 years ago, obviously, I was recruited for this really unique and unusual job, and why I do what I do here, which took me a while. Took me a minute to figure out. You have to go and interview for a job that you've been recruited for. Why did this one speak to you in ways that others hadn't when those opportunities came along? And I realized it's because I'm a warrior for the vulnerable. I'm a warrior for those who are marginalized, those who are nameless, voiceless, faceless in rooms where leaders are making decisions and may or may not be thinking as intently as I think they should, or we should or could, about the impacts of any of our decisions. And there's something about the marginalization that happens to people who woke up with one reality and went to bed with a very different one in terms of these very traumatic and devastating injuries that just spoke to me. And this culture here speaks to me from a perspective of how I seek to lead. So that's what I'd say.
Well, I was fortunate 2 years ago to meet you when you were brand new, and timing's everything, because when Diane was looking for some help, I happened to be in her crosshairs, and with your blessing, you allowed me to come in and work with her team, and you've been nothing but a glorious leader to follow, and the way you lead is you allow others be their best version of themselves. And you've been so supportive to her and encouraged her to step outside of her comfort zone, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm honored to know you, Jandel. Or do I call you Dr. Davis, or do I call you Jandel?
You call me Jandel.
Okay, good. I apologize for not referencing the doctor, and I may.
It's going to be on my tombstone anyway.
Well, I don't believe that'll be the first thing people read about you. That's for darn sure. So, speaking of powerful men, Mr. John Eades, tell us about yourself. And same question, why do you do what you do today?
Well, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Davis for 2 reasons. One is I have a 6-year-old daughter that all she wants to be is a doctor. Yay. And it's thanks to women like her who've pushed the envelope and continue to show what's possible. For a little 6-year-old girl to say, I want to be a doctor. I say the president, but she says the doctor. So that's okay.
Ah,
I'll settle for that. And I also want to say thank you because as an OB/GYN, we have 2 healthy kids, but we also experienced 5 straight miscarriages. And I know the pain that women go through now, and men too, in that situation. So for everything that you've done, thank you. I know it's our first time meeting, but I appreciate that very much. A little bit about me. I'll do the short version. I got the opportunity to lead a team almost 10 years ago, and I thought I was going to be this natural born leader, Greg, and I really struggled. And we were about a year into building a team and a business, and I just couldn't get this engine to go like we needed it to. And so I called one of my team members in my office. And at the end of that meeting, after I let her go, she said, John, I didn't know where we're going, didn't know what I was doing, and didn't know how I was helping us get there. And if anybody's ever sat in that chair and realized that the problem is not your team, the problem is you from a leadership perspective, it's a tough chair to sit in. And I'm a faith-based guy. And I said, God, I don't know why that just happened, but I'm gonna do everything in my power to not let that happen to other people. And so at the time, I didn't know what the best leaders did. I didn't know how to teach others because I couldn't even do it well myself. But the last 10 years we've spent just studying, interviewing hundreds of leaders, doing 50,000 assessments of leaders, and helping them have those moments like I had before they get there. And then we obviously help them go, not just manage their teams, but lead their teams. So when you ask me why I do what I do, I say it's to help managers and executives to lead their best, because that's what changes lives, and that's what changes companies, and that's what changes families.
Amen. And I've been on record saying this many, many, many times, but I believe parenting and leadership go hand in hand. We have little followers and we have big followers, but they're followers. And what you are helping other men and women understand how to truly show up for their followers, how to lead the best they possibly can. And what you've provided me is a tool to share with my clients as to what principles matter and how communicating really matters. And it's a fantastic book. And obviously I'm not here to promote the book. I'm here to promote you and learn a little bit more about you. But just, again, thank you.
I appreciate that.
You very much.
I just want to say one more thing. No leader is perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. I've made plenty of them. I'm sure Jandel's made plenty of them. You've made plenty of them. We have this belief that every leader has to be perfect, and that's just not reality. And so I think it's especially during this season of COVID and everything that's gone on, of giving ourselves some grace that we're going to make mistakes and we're not going to do things perfectly. And our teams aren't going to be perfect either. And they have a lot going on as well. And so I would encourage anybody listening that just to not be so hard on yourself during this season, and just know that you're on a journey of growing and developing just like we all are.
Well, it's ironic you're moving us into a topic I'd like for both of you to dive into now, and think about leadership styles and the qualities and attributes of great leaders. And before I turn it over to you, Jandel, I would say that of all the people I've interviewed, being perfect has never come up. It's never been on the list. What do you want and need from your leader? I want him or her to be perfect. Never shows up. But to you, Jandel, when you think about great leaders, and use yourself as an example, please, what attributes and qualities do you believe are most important to being a great leader and being the best leader we possibly can?
Well, certainly the list you could say is long, and any one of us may have a few of those particular principles, but the ones or attributes, the ones that I think are most important at the top of it is actually caring. And kindness and compassion. We know that the heart of a good physician is that. People assume, both as clinicians, and I practiced medicine for 25 years, actually. I probably should have said that until this last 10 or 11 when I stopped everything and went into this space. But they assume we have the technical know-how. They could care less about our technical know-how if they don't think we care. So I think that idea of being able to have, to be wholly, really present and give the gift of your heart. The second is the ability to be super transparent and vulnerable. It's amazing what happens, the power of I don't know. both in clinical care as well as certainly this more deliberate path I've taken in this last decade or so, that if you show people what you know, what you don't know, it creates an environment, it creates a space for people to step in and both show their own vulnerability, but also to help. I think another quality is humor. I mean, we have done some tough duty at Craig, as you can imagine, since March. We set up an incident command right away. We are a team of equals. I think that's the other thing is you got to be very, very clear about what you bring and what you don't, and surround yourself by the right expertise to help you get things done, in particular in times where the way is not clear. But there's laughter at that table, in addition to a lot of serious decision making in the face of rapidly changing information. I think the other, and you said it earlier, Greg, is this notion of showing gratitude. There is, to leave a hospital, leave any place you work, and not have said thank you several times a day is really a failure, I think, on behalf of great leaders. I did mention transparency and vulnerability. The other is just authenticity. Maybe I'd end there. Is just tell the freaking truth. Tell the truth all the time. Own your stuff when you don't do things right. So there's the thank you and the power of the apology in that as well. So.
And I would say that what I hear most often, and you said it without saying it, is showing transparency and vulnerability and being authentic. You also exemplify so other people can follow. Because if we are not willing to show up transparent and honest and authentic, how can we possibly look another human being in the eye and say, where's your vulnerability? Well, leaders beget leaders, and leadership begets leadership. So thank you for that, and well said. John, I know there's much more meat on the bone there, and let's hear your perspective as you've interviewed several.
Well, to back up what she's saying, I think listening becomes really important. And I know it seems so simple. And if you ask my wife, how good of a listener is John? The answer is probably not what I want to hear. But so many of us think we're great listeners, but it really becomes a powerful part of leadership. Because if you can listen and understand what's actually going on in your space or your environment or with your people, then you can modify and pivot and change. And so I think listening becomes one of the really critical skills of leadership, probably more so today than ever before, because there's so much noise. I mean, there's just so much that comes at us, and trying to filter it out and really be present. And I like to tell people, hearing is with your ears, listening is with your mind. And that's a choice that we all have to make, is say, I am going to be where my feet are, and I'm going to be really present in this conversation, and I'm going to actually listen to it. And I was with my sister-in-law. I'm going to give her a little credit here. We were talking about politics around the holidays, around Thanksgiving. And we sit on different sides of the political aisle on some cases. And we're sitting there having this unbelievable discussion about what's going on in our world, and racial tensions and politics and presidents and all this stuff. And she kept saying 3 words to me throughout this discussion that I want everybody listening to take ownership of. And they were, tell me more. Tell me more. And it was amazing. Every time she would say it, Greg, I would just keep going. And I knew she cared about me, and I knew she was listening to me, because she kept digging and she kept asking those simple questions. She wasn't just silent. She was asking questions to help me continue to get out what needed to get out. And so, to back up what Jandel said, I think it's going to be really difficult for you to know your people and be really authentic with them if you don't know and care about them, if you don't know what's going on.
What I loved about what you said about listening, and I was listening to you, and I was going to ask you the question, where do you have to be first before you can be a great leader? And you said it over and over. We must be present, and that's a choice. We must have our feet and our butt securely planted and be in a space of, I want to hear you. I don't need to hear you. I want to hear you. I know it's semantics, but I coach a lot with what do you want versus what do you need. And let's give your sister-in-law some additional credit. She was listening, and she was listening to understand versus to be understood. And I love that. Tell me more. And that's
Yeah,
what,
and I would, and to even further that point, this sounds bad, and I don't want to blanket statement anybody. Women tend to be better listeners than men, and I have no statistical backing in this up. I don't have research to prove it, but I think men have to work harder at it for some reason. I don't know why. Women can absolutely be bad listeners, and so can men. But I have to work harder at being a better listener than somebody else. But we all can acquire this skill.
I'm going to go back to the first thing that Jandel says, and this is a guess, because I too have to really, especially with my kids, I have to practice what I coach, and that is be present. But I'll go back to what Jandel said earlier about caring and being kind and considerate. I believe if you do a lot of research, women are naturally more caring and kind and considerate than men, and maybe it's how they're raised, maybe it's in, I don't know, but that would be my guess. And Jandel, would you care to comment on why John believes women are better listeners than men?
I remember something that I'd heard early on as I became acquainted with Brene Brown. And I actually don't think if you really look that there are true genetic or hormonal differences with respect to listening. I think it's cultural. And I remember her telling the story about some guy walking up to her, at a break or after something she had presented. I think it was part of either her first or second TED Talk, and him talking about the fact that he's not allowed to be vulnerable. We put him up on that white horse, and he's got to perform. And I think that's what we've done culturally is we've set you guys up to not have the ability to say, I don't know, to say, I'm afraid, to not come armed with answers as opposed to just chill and let me say whatever it is I have to say and don't feel obliged at all to help me solve my own problems.
Amen.
So I think this is a cultural or a sociocultural norm that we've set up. And I think it does men a huge disservice, puts unbelievable weight on them in terms of please be my hero, my whatever knight or whoever in shining armor. And it's also not good for women because it doesn't enable us or create the space for us to say what we need to say and then with tell me more, solve some of our own issues. And so anyway, that's what I would say. I don't think there's a difference. In fact, the funny thing is now I'm going to add tell me more because I know I should be saying that more. But one I have here, I heard just a few weeks ago is wait, why am I talking? And so I put it on a little sticky note and it's right on the bottom of my computer, just to, my monitor here, just to prompt me to sit back and just, it is a hard thing to do. And it's in particular hard for physicians because people come to us wanting answers. And so we are trained to, and in fact, it's been shown that we interrupt patients on average 12 seconds or 15 seconds into the story or their you walk in and say, what's going on? That's when we first interrupt. And if we would wait for 90 seconds and just let them talk, we could get so much more accomplished and also learn so much more that helps us in the, in terms of therapeutic interventions and relationships. And the same goes in this work. If you shut people down, they're not going to talk to you. So anyway, I'm off down a little bit of a tangent, but I'm here to give you all a break.
I actually think this is so important, and I don't mean to interrupt, Greg, but this is so important because that old story from a physician that someone comes in with a problem and they tell you 3 or 4 symptoms, and the doctor says, "Okay, take this pill," and off you go. But if they would just take the time to find out more and to ask a few more clarifying questions and then give them the pill, the person that's then taking the pill feels so much more understood about why they're taking it. And this is a good diagnosis. And we know the power of this thing right here.
Absolutely.
I mean, the placebo effect is real. I'm not saying medicine's not, but really feeling understood before getting your answer or someone helping you get there, it goes such a long way for our brains.
Well, the other thing, John, that you mentioned though is, and how often do you not give the pill if you just listen? Because you think you've got all the answers walking in. And I can't tell you how many times, both clinically and in this work, just keeping this quiet a little bit longer and when I said these 10 times bigger than this, I was going to go right. And I, at the end, went left, and that made all the difference, and that was the right way to go.
When I understood what humility and vulnerability really were, I became a more powerful human being, period. And I would tell anybody that's listening, I said this before I knew Brene Brown was even a person, vulnerability is powerful. And it's not, but as long as it's authentic. And then I love what Brene does. And if Brene, if you're listening, there's a favor I ask you. If you can tune in on February 4th and make a cameo appearance, I'd love you forever. Or I'm going to ask you to send us a video and just say you wish you could be here, but you can't. But more on that later. I love the way Brene Brown marries vulnerability and courage. And courage is a principle that I really want to coach into, because it's the courage about having a courageous conversation, asking more questions, sitting there a little bit more when you're uncomfortable, and having the courage to stay there in the conversation, in the relationship. So, John, you mentioned something earlier, and it's not lost on me, because the next question is about it. You said you're faith-based, or you have a faith, and we all do, and regardless of what it is. But I'd like to ask you both, what's your 2 cents about servant leadership? What are your thoughts on it, and where do you believe it came from, and does it have a place in true leadership as we see leadership going forward?
I don't think there's any other kind. I think we should actually stop calling it servant leadership. I just think that's what really great leadership looks like today. And if you look at the way we define leadership is this: someone whose actions inspire, empower, and serve in order to elevate others. I'll say it again. Someone whose actions inspire, empower, and serve in order to elevate others. And these words are very intentional, because the word inspire, what it actually means is to breathe life into. So how many times have you left work and you feel like you got the life sucked right out of you? Not just by the work, because work's supposed to be hard, okay? But by a boss or a manager that almost did it intentionally. And nobody wants to go to a place of work like that. It's too hard. This life we live in is way too hard to be surrounded by people that suck the life right out of us. So that's why inspiring people is so important. The word empower, what it means is to help people make decisions. So nobody wants to be micromanaged in every single situation. Are there times where we need the hierarchy and we need people to make decisions and make them in committees? Absolutely. Part of a leader's job is to make decisions. Yeah. However, we've got to empower our people to make decisions where the information is, or else they'll never make them on their own. And that model doesn't work in today's leadership. And the last word is to serve, Greg. And that is just turning that pyramid upside down. Yeah. We think of it like this, but we need to be thinking of it like this. And so can you put people's needs ahead of your own? And that's the way we think about servant leadership, and really the definition of leadership altogether. Because if you do that, if you inspire, if you empower, and you serve, you'll be on your way to elevating other people. And that is the key to successful leadership today.
Jandel, love to hear your opinion on servant leadership, where it fits in your world, and what's your opinion of it, and where does it play?
I was listening. Well, first of all, ditto to everything John so beautifully articulated. The interesting thing is, when I talk about what I do, I don't use the word I lead Craig. I say I serve Craig. I get to, and I say I get to serve Craig. So it almost, I say it like some kid. Guess what I get to do today? And I really do feel that way in terms of the blessing that this particular leg of the journey has brought me to. And so it is about service. Part of that is also no job too small. That's how I look at it. Is I'm one of the crew. And I think the beauty of that is people are willing to help, and people are willing to step in, and people know that you've created the space that you can step in and psychologically safely offer help and assistance. So.
Well, I will go back to what you said immediately when you started sharing. You get to, and as a little kid, we look forward to serving others. We look forward to leading. We look forward to coming to work and being part. And the second piece I want to bring up again is part of the crew. When followers see leaders doing the work and not just telling them how to do the work, they're in there getting there. And Doug McGee is a great friend of mine, and I had him on the show a couple weeks ago, and I asked him the same question. He said, it happens when we get in the mud and we're having fun, we're getting dirty, we're creating things. Let's move into today. What do you believe the world needs now? Beyond what the world needs now is love, sweet love. What do you honestly believe as leaders this world needs right now?
I'd say, and it's not, it's one of the books that I truly love, and it's the strengths-based leadership, is what are the needs of followers? And that they need hope, compassion, stability, and trust. And our job as leaders is to try to create a narrative, a framework in which to walk through the muck or to walk through, ambiguous, uncertain times. And then trust is exactly that. And, in terms of, and even more than extending trust, being trustworthy, being worthy of trust. So that's what we need. And I think that that's what has been sadly so absent in leadership for too long, and certainly has left us all feeling like we've been spending 40 days and 40 nights in a desert this last year, at one of the most, let's not even one of, the most fearful time from a mortality, let alone a morbidity perspective, in at least my life.
So to you, John, what does the world need right now? How can we show up better as leaders?
Well, I think Jandel really did a really good job. Napoleon said a leader's job is to define reality and to deliver hope. And so I think he had it right. And I think she has it right. The thing, I think right now can you define reality for what the current situation is with full transparency and honesty? And then can you deliver hope on a daily basis? Again, plants, if you put a plant on a windowsill, they naturally lean towards the light. If you put that plant in a dark closet, it dies. And so I don't think leaders can stop thinking about being life-giving and being something that their people want to lean towards versus the other way. And even in the face of uncertainty and doubt and struggle, the belief that our best days are ahead of us. And I don't think leaders can stop that, not in like some cheerleader rah-rah kind of way, if that's not your style, but to just constantly be focused on the better days ahead and being relentlessly optimistic. People are attracted to that for a reason, because it's how we're wired. And it's what we need right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't need a leader telling me how wrong everything is and the worst is ahead of us. I know it's hard. I live in it. I get it. I want to hear about how we're going to get through this together and what it's going to look like beyond this. And I think about this quote a lot. Only leaders who are tested become great. Mm-hmm. And like, this is to me a real season of testing. And if you get through this, you're going to be a better leader on the other side of it. And so it doesn't make it fun. Doesn't mean I want to go through this test, but it's an important test to go through, because I think we're going to be better because of it.
And I love your analogy about the plant, and it goes towards the light that helps it grow. It goes to the light that makes it stronger. And I would tell you then, if we would stop and nurture the people in our lives just a little bit more every day, and we did that millions of times across the world, we would be in a better place tomorrow. And that's my hope for a lot of folks. And one of the reasons why you guys were on the show, and I appreciate it and means a ton, and you both know I kind of had a dream back in April, May, and I said I want to do something different, put something out there that will help people shift in the moment, grow in the moment, develop in the moment. And I came up with this crazy idea of the Leadership Development Day, and I just want to ask you both, and share your heart, if you will, when you first heard about the idea, what were you thinking? And what made you make the decision to be part of it? John, I'm going to start with you this time.
I think one of my men that I died a long time ago, but I've learned a lot from, is a guy named Dr. Miles Monroe. And Dr. Miles Monroe talks about the difference in knowledge, in comprehension, and application. Knowledge, comprehension, application. And when you told me about the Leadership Development Day and the way that you wanted to do it, and it wasn't just about transferring knowledge, but it was also about trying to help people apply and comprehend some of these lessons on their journey, that I get excited about. because it's the application, the ability to do things that changes our lives or our teams or our organization. So anybody that is about that right now, I'm all for. So I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And I'm coming out, I'm bringing my whole family.
Love it.
We're going to make a little trip out of it to the Denver area. And I can't wait to, again, be a small part in that application process for leaders.
Well, love your heart, John, and love the way you show up for the world and the leaders and what you're doing. And knowing you're on the team, I just want you to know it makes me extremely happy. Thank you. Jandel, when you first heard about it, what were your thoughts and why did you decide to say yes?
Well, this may sound quippy or silly, but it's not. I said yes because you asked. I think the opportunity for, to the extent that it's ever helpful, and I do mean this with all humility, seeing different faces of leadership are super important. And so part of what I sort of sense is my obligation, to those who much is given, much is expected. And I don't come from a ton of money or any of that kind of stuff. I feel a real obligation to show different faces of what is possible. What
Yes.
is possible with hard work and sort of commitment to a mission. So it's a lot of ways of saying, because you told me to, Greg.
No, I so appreciate it. And it takes courage to ask really powerful men and women to help you. And I love the saying that someone told me a few years ago. He said, you get 100% of what you don't ask for. So I want people on that day to start asking for exactly what it is they want in their life, from their spouse, from their kids, from their work, from their leaders. And then I believe during the day, there's going to be hundreds of epiphanies. There's going to be hundreds of shifts and possibly thousands, depending on how big the audience is, because they will hear something, they will feel something that shifts in the moment. And to your point, John, they're going to grow right now. And I don't believe we need to wait to get better. We have to choose, do we want to be better? Do we want to be a better leader? And people say, well, who is this for? And it's almost easier to say, who is it not for this day? If you're a man or a woman or a human being that seeks to grow in a small amount of way, tune in. The people that we've assembled are going to help you grow in the moment. And if you want to be a better parent, I dare say this might be one of the best days you've ever spent making yourself a better man or woman or parent. And I have nothing to say other than I've brought some great people together and I'm turning them loose and let them serve, and see what happens. But again, Dr. Jandel AllenDavis, please call me Jandel. Appreciate you being here today. Again, you don't have, from my point of view, you just always are so beautiful, so smiley, and so present. I appreciate you, recognize you. Thank you, John. It's great to see your face. Thank you for everything you've done to help me be a better coach with your book. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. There's companies out there who are reviewing your book on a constant basis, and I ask them questions about it, and you've brought Elevate into my world, and it's really made me a better man. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So with that, I will say thank you to all of you that have tuned in and listened to us. This has been another great episode of Your Servant Leader, and again, we'll see you on the other side.
Wow.
Thank you both.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.